Last week, as you guys seen, I completed that skid steer coupler for my new tree shear. I really want to get the tree shear done for you guys by the following weekend. So the minute I got home from work, I would go outside and work on it, and I did that every day throughout the week. It was a little bit more work than I anticipated, but it actually came out really good. It came out exactly like I envisioned it. You know, it's hard when you're doing a project like that for the first time. You know, I'd never built anything like a tree shear before. I was just going off of pictures I seen online. So I put a couple different pictures together in my head of what I thought it should look like and how I thought it should work. And I went and built it. Today is Sunday, actually. I finished it Saturday night, and I finally got done with it, and I couldn't wait to test it out. It was too dark outside to take the camera with me, so I figured I'd just go out there and cut a couple trees, see how it does, and then the following morning I was going to take the camera with me and do like an entire video on, you know, using the tree shear. Well, Saturday night I went out, I cut a couple small trees with it. I'd say they're between 1 inch and 2 in diameter, and cut them no problem. Then I went over to like a 3.5 or 4 inch tree, and I got the jaws locked onto it, and I squeezed, and it seemed like the cutting edge went about halfway through the log, and then it stopped. So I revved it up a little higher, and I squeezed again, and I still didn't seem to want to go past like halfway through the log. So I got out the tractor, went and looked at it, and that's when I seen I had a problem. So we had a little bit of a failure with the tree shear, and I just want to let you guys know that beforehand. I didn't get it on video, and I feel really bad about it because I know you guys really want to see it work. So this video is going to show you guys my entire process of building it. You'll see me build it from, you know, scratch pretty much, and then when I'm all done building it, I will talk about what happened as far as the failure, why I think it failed, and what I'm going to do in the future to try to fix it. So hope you guys enjoy the video, and we'll catch you in the next one. Okay, so right now I got everything kind of set up as if it's gonna be when I weld everything in place. So I have this tubular piece of steel here with a sleeve inside, so this thing can rotate horizontally or vertically. That way I can cut limbs off trees. I got the cylinder here where it's probably gonna go. This whole setup may move left or right some, I'm not quite sure yet. I still have to retract the cylinder and then fully extend it to see where everything lines up. But hopefully I can maintain a 4-inch diameter within this cutting surface here. I got a couple braces back here just so you guys can see how it's gonna be supported from the center post here out. And then that way it can distribute the weight. When I'm cutting a tree and the weight of the tree drops down on it, this will support that weight. I'm really happy with everything so far. The skid steer plate fits beautifully. Now what I'm gonna do is make the eyelets so that I can start sizing up where I want this cylinder. So there's gonna be an eyelet coming off here, and then there's gonna be an eyelet coming off the corner here somewhere. And then that way I can get my cylinder on there and kind of see, you know, where I want this blade to be, and then how far off I want this this stopping plate here. So that's what I'm gonna work on now. I made a couple different versions of my eyelet, and this one was a little bit too big. I was afraid that it was gonna bind within the cylinder forks on the top there. So I decided to go with this one. This is about 1.5 inches in diameter. I'm gonna give myself maybe like 1 inch off the bracket, and I plan on cutting a couple lines here with the plasma, and then I'll just kind of freehand the top half of the circle here. I'll clean it up on a grinder, and once I have that made up, I'll use it as a template to make myself another one. And that should be my 2 eyelets for there and there. So these are the eyelets for the cylinder. So one eyelet is gonna come off the back of this cutting edge, and then the other eyelet is gonna be welded to the main frame for the back of the cylinder. So this will be probably welded somewhere around here. What I wanna work on now is cutting this flat stock down so that I can build a couple more eyelets or mounts for the cutting edge itself. So I'm gonna have a piece on either side with a hole drilled through here. And once I get that done, then I'll be able to mount up my stop plate here, which is what the cutting edge is gonna butt up against. So once I have this cutting edge in place, I'll know exactly where this needs to be. And I'm gonna actually feel like I'm making some progress here, finally getting some of these things welded to the frame. You guys saw that I got my cutting edge welded on. So that's all welded on. I also sharpened this blade off camera. I don't know how well you guys can see it. You guys see me weld one of these end caps on. I ended up welding both sides to give it some more strength. So now I got an end cap here on either side. They turned out really nice. I've got this 3/16 by 2 flat stock, and I'd like to put this on the side here. So my goal is to have it set up like this, as you can see, on either side. And then what that's gonna do is give it like a taper. It's gonna be more like a splitting wedge from a wood splitter. So this way, if it's tapered out towards the edges, that'll allow the cutting edge to go all the way in without the log getting butted up against this frame here. So that's my plan. So I'm gonna weld these all the way around, and then that way it's got a nice taper that goes all the way through this 2x2. That should help with cutting larger logs. So I got my eyelets drilled out off camera. I drilled them out to be 3/4 inch so that I could use a 3/4 pin. I also drilled out the 2 mounts that are gonna hold the cutting blade. And what I did was I used these magnets to hold the one in place so I could figure out exactly where the hole should be on the cutting edge that I just got done welding up. Alright, so the first thing I want to do here is weld my eyelet onto the end of the cutting edge. So I'm going to get that welded on now, and then we can get the eyelet for the other end of the cylinder welded up to the frame. It's starting to actually look like something now. Okay, so this other eyelet I'm gonna have as far off the right side of the frame as I can. So now what I wanna do is pin the cylinder to the frame here and pin the other end of the cylinder to the cutting edge, and then that way I can figure out exactly where I want my cutting edge to be before I weld everything in solid. Okay, so now I got my mounts pinned onto here. So now I'm going to get my cylinder mounted to the cutting edge in the frame here, and then that's going to tell me exactly where I want to put this and have it welded. I'm going to rotate this down. That way I'm not struggling here to try to hold everything. Okay. So now you guys can finally start to see what it's going to look like here. I went and grabbed the square so that I can make sure that I'm nice and square coming off this main frame. Well, as you can see, I got the cylinder mounted. The eyelet down here is tacked into place. The eyelet up here, that's tacked into place. And then my 2 main mounts or eyelets, one for each side of the cutting edge blade. That's all set. And now what I gotta do is tack in place that piece of 1x2. So that's gonna go like this. And that's what that blade is gonna butt up against. So I wanna get this tacked in place now. Now that I know where everything is going to sit. And then if everything looks good, what I'm going to do is fully weld all my mounts. And then once that's done, I can start working on my braces. Okay, so I got this piece finally welded on there. Now what I gotta do is remove the cylinder again and take these pins out. I gotta remove the blade as well so that I can finish welding all of my eyelets. All right, well, them things ain't going anywhere. Now I can get this all put back together and get my braces put on. Finally starting to look like something. Everything's welded together. Everything's pinned into place. I still gotta drill my holes here so that this thing isn't pivoting and rotating on its own like that. So let's get these braces on. Then maybe we could even give this thing a test run. All right, so for the bracing, as I said, I was gonna use this 1x1. So this is gonna go on here, something like this. So it's gonna kind of match the cylinder on the other side there. And that's gonna give it some support. When this cutting edge goes to press a log up against this block right here, it's gonna put a lot of force on it. So I'm gonna want something behind it to kind of reinforce it and hold it from coming backwards. Okay, so I got my piece made. It's not quite perfect, but it's gonna be good enough. It looks pretty good. I only got a small gap on each side that I'll fill with some weld, and it should be pretty good. So I'm going to use this 1x1 to go from the center shaft out to the coupler. Probably going to do it something like this. So I got to make some marks. I did make one mark already, and I got to make another mark on this end. Going to use my hand grinder to notch it out and hopefully get these welded into place. So now that that's done, now what I can do is take the entire cutter out of the sleeve here, and I'm gonna fully weld the main shaft going to the base here, and then I also want to weld this other piece of pipe coming out of the main frame of the cutter. Last thing we got to do is build some bracing on the inside of this channel here, and then I'm going to put some end caps on it. Okay, so now you guys can see kind of how I wanted to brace this. I should rigid up the end of the frame at the end of this channel, and once I'm all done with the other side, I will weld a cap on the end, which is going to tie this entire outer piece together. Okay, I got a nice piece of flat stock here that I had laying around. It's 3/8 thick. This will be nice and hefty for the end caps. I marked out 3x3 squares on this piece of flat stock, so now I'm going to cut them out with the plasma cutter, and we'll get them welded in place. All right, I'd say that's good enough. I wanted to grind the edges down and kind of smooth out the corners, so when I paint it, the paint sticks a little better. Plus, I think it just looks nicer. It all just kind of blends together now. It looks more smooth. So that's that side. And here's the other side. Now, the last thing I want to do here is put a brace right in the middle of this 1x2 right here. I'm going to use a piece of 1x1 to go right across to this other brace here, and then that'll kind of support the back side of this when I get into a tough log. I've gotten all my braces done today, which I'm really happy about. Off camera, I installed a bolt here, a grade 8 bolt instead of the pin, and that way I can keep some tension on either side of these eyelets. That just keeps this thing from wanting to spread apart if I get into a really hard log. That way this blade isn't tempted to lift up or down and bend something. So now the last thing I gotta do is drill a hole right in between these two braces here, and then that way I can lock this thing in place horizontally or like this vertically. I'm gonna make a couple little eyelets for the hoses to run through. So I'll probably have one here on the frame, and then I'll probably make one over here somewhere where it can come up over the skid steer coupler. So I'll have a couple little hold down, tie down points for the hydraulic line. But for right now, I'm just gonna let it hang here and go test it, see what happens. So now that you've seen the build of this tree shear, I gotta inform you guys that it didn't work the way that I planned. So I cut a couple branches with it and it worked really good. I cut them right in half, worked flawlessly, and then I got to a bigger branch, and when I went to cut it, it went about halfway through it and it stopped. Couldn't figure out why. I closed it a couple times. I went lower on the tree, clamped it again, and then I finally got out and looked, and I could see the blade was like halfway through it, And then I backed the blade off and backed up, and I could see that this A-frame here that I built, which is like the chopping block, got bent. Now this is pretty thick steel, 3/16, 2x1. And then this is, I think this is 1/8 inch and this is 1/8 inch. You know, I made it like this A-frame here so that it was very strong. And I don't know if I underestimated the pressure from the cylinder or what, but my thought is that there's too much resistance going through the log, and that's why this bent. I don't necessarily think that this was weak. I think that either the blade needed to be sharper or I need like some other kind of cutting edge off of this block. Instead of just having a flat surface, I think that maybe I need 2 cutting edges so that you got less resistance going in through the log. Because right now this whole backside is just flat, so it's really doing nothing but holding it there. So I feel like if I made this another cutting edge, between the two coming together, I feel like that would create a lot more force in a smaller spot to cut through the log versus you got this wide, flat piece just holding it. That's my thought. I'd be curious to know what you guys think, what I should do next here. Like I said, everything else worked out really good. I do plan on, regardless, using the skid steer coupler and this whole setup here that I made for other things. I'd like to make like a hydraulic circular saw, or maybe even some sort of like a stump grinder, or even like a hydraulic chainsaw, something where I could stick off the end, kind of like a pole saw, where I could slide in here and put my bolt in and lock it in place, and maybe I could pivot it and whatnot. So this I plan on using for other projects regardless, but it's this I got to figure out now what to do with. Pretty upset about it. I put a lot of time and work into it this week to try to have it done for you guys by this following weekend of when I started that skid steer plate. But now this is where I'm at. Let me know what you guys think. I hope you guys enjoyed watching it. Kind of feel bad that at the end it didn't work. I really wanted to give you guys a finished working product, and I was planning on painting this. This was all going to be Kubota gray. I was going to leave the cylinder Kubota orange, and I think it would look really nice. So I may walk away from this job temporarily because I really need to get this push box done. It's getting colder and colder out, and winter is coming. Snow is coming very soon. So I really need to get that push box project started. So I may have to set this aside just for a little while so I can get that push box done, and then I can always come back to this once we figure out some plans. Maybe you guys can leave some comments below. Hope you guys enjoyed the video, and as always, we'll see you guys in the next one.